Work from home, hybrid working, work from anywhere. That seems to be the new normal that we have. In this kind of a situation, how do you engage your employees well? And how do you build a culture which is a lot more inclusive and gives that flexibility for employees to operate to their full potential? Who better to talk about that than my guest today? I have with me Heather Saville Gupta. She's the Global Head Culture and Employee Engagement for Whitehat Jr. It's a Byju's company. Welcome, Heather. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So, Heather, in this new normal that we have for work places and how employees are working, what are the biggest challenges this remote or hybrid work models have posed for employee engagement?
So I think the most obvious and the most significant challenge is the one of bonding and connection. Right now, my organization is an interesting one because we grew almost entirely during the pandemic.
Wow.
So we scaled from about 300 employees to over 5,000 or 6,000 in that whole lockdown period. So I think about 97% of our people have not ever met each other. Right. So organizations that have met in the past and have gone into lockdown and then have come back in some way have that residual bond of belonging and connection. Yeah. We don't have that in many cases. So I think one of the big struggles is to keep that bonding going. And I think now people are also getting tired. In the beginning, it was quite exciting. It was quite a novelty to be online, right? We were all excited by doing all these Zoom calls, and it was quite stimulating and quite energizing. Now, I think now it's gone beyond 1.5 years, right? I think people are tired. I'm noticing that people are keeping their cameras off more and more. Yeah. I think people are just exhausted of having to kind of engage from behind a screen. It's taxing for the eyes, it's taxing for the ears. You have to kind of think about the way you look, your background, you've got people moving around you. And I think that fatigue has really, really set in now. It's connection, it's bonding, and now there's an additional sense of just almost burnout from this online kind of situation. And I think that's very, very challenging for people.
Okay. So what are some things which probably you as the lead for the culture and employee engagement are experimenting with to kind of address this Zoom fatigue, as they call, which has crept in now?
So we try and do a lot of fun activities as well. I mean, all organizations do. And what we particularly try to do, because we are a very task-orientated, metrics-orientated organization, because we have a kind of a long way to go in terms of our expansion plans and so on. So there's a lot of work happening, right? So in between that, we try to ensure that people have some time for downtime. So even if it's like an hour, the teams come together and it's just a kind of casual chat, and sometimes also introduce family members if that's comfortable for people as well. Okay. Obvious things like exercise classes and meditation classes and all of that we offer. And the important thing about these initiatives is that they should be short. Yeah. And they should be flexible. So if you're going to do like a 1-hour yoga class, you're unlikely to get a lot of participants because nobody has an hour in the day. Correct. If you're offering 10-minute, 15-minute modules, sometimes even 5 minutes is all you need. So we have these 10-minute short slots that people can just, and very frequently during the day. Okay. So you can just jump onto one for 10 minutes. It's meditation or it's yoga or it's exercises or it's desk exercises, just to get that sense of recharge. Okay. The other thing is just monitoring, monitoring people's work and work life, because what happens when we're online is that people can just look at your diary and just take time. Yeah. Right? Because that old sense of being in the office, having to physically move to a meeting, you couldn't be in more than one meeting at the same time, right? Physically. Correct. Now what happens is you end up with 2-3 meetings back, like at the same time. Yes. If somebody's put a meeting in your diary, somebody else has put a meeting in your diary, taking advantage of all of these tools like diary sharing, which are brilliant tools, right? But at the same time, they lead into situations where people are just grabbing time. If 3 people are grabbing the same time from me, then I'm in a very compromised position, right? Because I'm like, okay, which meeting do I attend? And then I have to turn one down, and that causes more stress. And then I'm trying to jump between meetings at the same time. And that is happening a lot. So people are feeling the exhaustion of just trying to juggle all of those, which never used to happen when we were physically, because you could only physically be in one place at one time, right? So we're trying to also make sure that there's sensitization in the organization around the fact that people also need some breathing space in their day.
True, that's
important. But and encouraging people to sort of push back and say, listen, I'm sorry, I already have something, I already have a meeting, or blocking an hour for lunch, or blocking some time for some R&R for themselves. So these are also some ways which we're looking to kind of help.
Interesting. So a lot of these things are evolving as we see, right? So some of these people have, or organizations also not been used to these kind of things in the past. So from a future standpoint, a lot of it has got to do with culture. So how will organizations of the future enhance the workplace culture, which is a lot more open, flexible, and employee friendly?
So I think one of the greatest gifts that COVID gave us, ironically, is the understanding and the acceptance that people can actually work from home. So that's a big paradigm shift, right? So in the good old days, 2019, there was a lot of resistance to allowing people to work from home. I remember having conversations then and trying to push a more flexible working agenda, particularly from a diversity lens, right, to support women with children and so on and so forth. And I remember having those conversations and being told work from home won't work. You can't trust people to work from home. They're just going to sit and relax all day. Right now, we know that that is now not the case, right? We know that people are responsible, people will be accountable, people can work from home, people can juggle all of that stuff, right? So that's opened our eyes to the possibility of being able to trust people for wherever they are, right? Now the challenge is to create those ideally hybrid working situations. Now our options are open to us now. Let's assume COVID is done. Option one is back to the way we were. Right, which shows we haven't learned anything from this experience. Option two is everyone stays work from home, which, as we've discussed, has all the problems and has all the challenges. Option three is the hybrid version. Now that also brings challenges for itself, right? But if it's managed properly, it will allow for flexibility. You know, I may have some functions which are a little bit more office bound if they are dependent more on people being together. I may have some functions who can come in and out at will, and then I'll need to structure my offices around them, maybe with hot seating, maybe with booking systems, maybe with whatever. But hybrid versions are definitely the way forward. One of the biggest challenges of any work from home or hybrid system in particular becomes the diversity and inclusion angle. Because then you end up looking through the lens of people who are in the office and people who are not in the office, who are part of a physical group, which becomes potentially a bit cliquey, right? Because I'm there with my people and I end up in this kind of little tight group. And people who are at home. So we need to work hard to make sure that everybody feels included within an organization's culture, wherever they are sitting, whether it's in the office or at home. So that's a big piece of work.
That's a very interesting aspect. And I have a follow-up question for that is, you know, especially if you move to a hybrid work environment, right? So like you said, some of them will be close bonded in office and some are working remotely. So how do you then build the rewards and recognition mechanism or metrics or programs around that? Because, you know, there is a possibility that people who are working from home have the feeling that, you know, probably I'm not getting that kind of visibility which my colleague who is going to office regularly and working. So how do we address that?
So you need to make sure that your metrics for performance are very tight and very clearly defined, right? And they should not rely on the relationship part of the equation. So gathering the data about performance is very critical and always has been, frankly. Looking at performance through the lens of values and behaviors, which we also do. So, and making sure that there is probably an HR presence that's coming in and scrutinizing some of that, right? So even measuring feedback for people who one physically works with and people who one, I mean, you'll see the difference, right? You'll have a benchmark of one versus the other. Because unconscious bias will always creep in, right? If I'm sitting with somebody, then I'm more likely to create that bond with them. Unconsciously, I may also give them preference in a performance rating. So analyzing that data, making sure that another filter then comes in, which is work from home or work from office, right? So filtering with that data, because anyway, HR screens for bias, right? That's what we do as part of performance management. Now you're adding another filter. So it's not gender anymore. It's not just gender. It's not just age. It's not just kind of background. It's also work from home, non-work from home.
Mm.
So we can make sure that those, and then if we're perceiving patterns of potential bias, obviously the role of HR and HR business partners in particular is to dig in and say, look, you know, we've noticed that you're giving these people certain ratings. Let's have a chat about kind of what's behind that, you know, and digging out some of these biases because they will exist and they will be unconscious.
True. I think what COVID has also done is there is, you know, the digital transformation has got accelerated by almost, I think, you know, about a decade or so. So what we would have expected about a decade from now, we're already seeing it here and now. And I think from an HR standpoint, using of that technology and the tools to bring in a lot more of transparency into either performance management or rewards recognition will play a very crucial role. So what do you think HR needs to do, especially because some of them may not be comfortable with technology itself, right? From an HR standpoint. So what would be some advice that you have for HR leaders who are now part of this digital transformation journey?
So I think as HR leaders, we need to be at the forefront of understanding the tech solutions which are available to us. The issue is that there are so many of them, and they are overcomplicated. If you strip it down to the basic essentials, what do you need, right? You need to get employee feedback.
Yeah.
Technology is a fantastic way to do that. If you're not comfortable or you don't have budget for the complicated ones which kind of come with all the feedback mechanisms and the nudges and everything else and linked systems, then create your own surveys, right? It doesn't have to be overcomplicated, but use technology to be able to gather feedback and gather data from people and then use that intelligently. I mean, understand that now you can also deliver things like training interventions very easily online. So for example, we have put some of our training programs into online modules so employees can take them at their own time.
Okay.
Of course, we have the nudges and we have the pushes and we have the reminders and we have all of that because that still goes on, right? But small bite-sized pieces of training rather than the old style, which is like one full day in a training intervention, you know, one full week in a training intervention. Just use technology to break that up and understand. I mean, as a trainer, also you have to then understand that if you're training people who are sitting behind a screen, how do you actively engage those people? How do you make training more interesting? So using technology, I mean, the simplest things, like when you're training, you can use stamps and you can use polls and you can use Mentimeter and you can do all of these kind of tools just are there to create a more enriched learning experience.
Okay.
If we don't know about these tools, then nobody else is going to learn. So it's very easy for us to kind of upskill ourselves, filter and sift through all the complexity and just find a few simple tools which work for us as HR leaders.
Great. So my, the next question would be, the mix of employees itself, right? So now with a lot of Gen Z entering into the workplace, that adds another level of complexity, either as an organization or as an HR leader, or even say, for example, with respect to building the culture or employee engagement itself. So what, according to you, is the expectation which probably the Gen Z will have from leaders and managers, and how as HR you can probably facilitate that kind of culture?
So Gen Z are interesting. There's been a lot of research done. I mean, the oldest of them are now 24 years old or so. So they are coming into the workplace.
Yeah.
And like the younger millennials, I mean, millennials are now 25 to 40, right? So they're quite a broad span. But like the younger millennials also, they're looking for different things from their leaders, right? Gone are the days where gray hair and experience gave you an automatic respect. It doesn't happen anymore, right? So we have to earn our respect, which I think is right. You know, I mean, there are leaders I know who personally I don't necessarily respect because I don't think they've earned that respect. And there are also fabulous younger leaders who may have worked for a shorter length of time, but who have an immense amount of maturity. And I also respect immensely. So that whole, you have to have so many years of experience, you have to have all this, that's also gone. What these younger folks are looking for is primarily a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
Right? I remember back in the days of starting work, purpose was the last thing on my mind. I was just like going to work, getting paid, coming home, and it was all kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Now the world has shifted and changed, right? For good. And I think being connected to a sense of purpose at work. Why am I here? Why am I getting up in the morning? Why am I coming in, or either coming onto video, or why am I going to the office? What is behind all of this? So that's also encouraging companies to define their purpose and communicate their purpose through meaningful, more purposeful leadership.
Okay.
These people also appreciate transparency. So the way we communicate, we can't wrap things up in complexity anymore.
True.
Nor can we say you have to wait 5 years for your first promotion, and then you have to wait another 2 years for the next one. All of those boundaries of time and measurement have gone, right? It's now about ability.
True.
And it's now about rewarding that. And yes, there's a certain amount of impatience that exists. It's always been there, right? I mean, I remember being very impatient as a 25-year-old, right? It's about changing those parameters of the way we evaluate people and rewarding at the right time rather than when, you know, the clock is ticking on certain dates, right? So all of that agility, all of that purpose, authentic leadership, transparency and communication, I think, and people want to have fun at work.
Yeah.
Right? Again, back in the old days, fun wasn't really part of the agenda. We made it happen, right? Because we wanted to create fun, but it wasn't what we were looking for at work.
True.
I think now people are actually looking for that fun. So organizations have to build in that sense of fun and excitement and enjoyment also in the workplace.
True, true. So last question would be, what advice would you have for, you know, HR who were probably leading the culture in the organization or setting up employee engagement programs? What advice would you like to give them?
I think recognize that the world has changed and it's never going to go back to the way it was. Look at that with a positive lens. So we have the ability to look at life through whichever lens we choose, right? We can look at it negatively, and that becomes a lot of moaning about the way the world is and life is so hard and life is so terrible. We have the opportunity as HR leaders to put a positive spin on stuff, and that energy that we bring to the table will also inspire people to kind of like push themselves ahead, because these are difficult times.
Yes.
It will continue to be challenging times. It's not going to go away with a magic wand, right? This is with us. So we have the ability to influence the sentiment, the feelings, the energy of all of the people around us. And it's inherent upon us to bring that to the table.
So true, so true. So that's very nicely said. So I think the lens with which we watch this world, which is transforming at such a fast pace, and, you know, focusing on transparency, creating that culture which is inclusive, and you know, building those initiatives which are more adaptive to how, while keeping the employees' interests in mind, will define what the future of work will look like. So Heather, thank you once again for your time. It was really wonderful having this conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Karthik. Thank you for having me.